Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Rutgers Football Live at the Voice of College Football. We had some technical difficulties, which have now been solved. So, welcome to you all. If you'd like to call into the show, the link is in the chat. We'd love to hear from you about Rutgers football or anything else about college football that you'd like to talk about. And if you enjoy the show, please hit the like and subscribe button. All right, as a New Jersey native and a Rutgers fan, there is nothing but disgust at today's 42-7 loss to Wisconsin. Okay, Wisconsin comes into this game 3-2, having lost 42-10 to Alabama at Camp Randall, and having gone to the Coliseum and faced a USC team that defeated it by 17 points, 38-21. Rutgers, on the other hand, came into the game 4-1. All right, having defeated Virginia Tech on the road, 26-23, having defeated Washington 21-18 in Piscataway, a Washington team that defeated Michigan last week. So Rutgers comes in 4-1 with the nation's 12th ranked rushing defense. And what do? They give up 42 points with the poorest defense and a very anemic offense. So, I'm going to start off by saying this. Coach Schiano, I love you. I think you're a great coach. I think you've done amazing things for Rutgers. But these players were not ready to play. And to the players at Rutgers, you are 4-1. You have an opportunity to contend in the Big Ten. And you have Wisconsin at home before you go several games on the road against tougher opponents, including USC. Your mindset has to be right. You have to be ready to be tough, to persevere, and to do anything you can to win. You have to have that hunger and that heart. And instead, Rutgers came out today and looked absolutely lifeless, and it is completely unacceptable for Rutgers football. If this program wants to elevate itself and become a national contender, games like this are going to ensure that it doesn't. And I blame the coaches and I blame the players for coming out without the motivation, without the discipline, without the focus to compete against a Wisconsin team that lost by 32 at Camp Randall to Alabama and 17 in Los Angeles to USC. So let's take a look at the team statistics. Total yards, Wisconsin, 549 total yards, much of which was on the nation's 12th ranked rushing defense. Rutgers, 271 yards. Passing yards, Brandon Locke, the backup quarterback for Wisconsin. I repeat, the backup quarterback for Wisconsin, 240 yards. Ethan Kaliakmanis, Rutgers quarterback, 103 yards. Now, here's the big statistic. Rushing yards. Being mindful that Rutgers was ranked as the 12th best rushing defense in the country. 309 yards they gave up to Wisconsin, including a 50-yard run to make the game 42-7. Rutgers had 168 yards on the ground, but Kyle Monangai was largely neutralized, especially as we'll talk about on a critical 4th-and-1 play in the second quarter. First downs, Wisconsin, 24. Rutgers, 16. Third down efficiency, Wisconsin, 7 of 14. Rutgers, 5 of 17, 29% third down conversion rate. And when we look at time of possession, that again favors Wisconsin, 34 minutes and 54 seconds to Rutgers, 25 minutes and 4 seconds. Now, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. I have tremendous respect for Coach Schiano and the Rutgers coaching staff. I love Rutgers football, but this is completely unacceptable. Like I said, you are 4-1 with victories on the road at Virginia Tech, home against Washington, and a narrow loss, okay? A narrow loss against Nebraska, which you should have won, but because you couldn't get in from the 3-yard line on 1st and goal, because you missed a field goal, because you faked a field goal that didn't work, and because you had 2 really bad interceptions, you lost that game. And today, you were humiliated. And that is just not acceptable. Where is the heart in these players? Where is the discipline in these players? Where is the focus in these players? They looked completely lifeless, like they didn't want to win. And as a result, Rutgers embarrassed itself and now sits at 4-2 with games including at USC and at Maryland and home against UCLA that it could very well lose. Today was not just a loss. Today was a step back for Rutgers football. And if they don't get it together soon, all right, then the reputation of Rutgers football is going to stay where it's been for the last 50 years, which is okay, but never enough to compete in the Big Ten. You had a chance today, Rutgers, and you were not successful. So what happened during the game that was significant? Well, let's look at the first drive for Wisconsin. The first drive, 8 plays, 89 yards in 3 minutes and 8 seconds. Okay? And that would portend very bad things to come. And I see Rob33 in the comments section. Rutgers got waxed. A loss, a curb stomp. You're damn right, Rob. You're damn right. And anybody who's a Rutgers fan should not accept this loss at all. This was the worst performance that Rutgers has had this season, and perhaps even going back to last season. And when you have players who are on the cusp of going 5-1 and beating a Wisconsin team that not only lost to USC and Alabama, but that would help to establish your credibility as a contender in the Big Ten, and you come at home in Piscataway and lose by 35, it's an absolute disgrace. Now, I don't blame Coach Schiano. A coach can only do so much. But if you don't get your SHIT together, players, well, Rutgers is going down. So the first drive, they go up 7-0. 8 plays, 89 yards in 3 minutes and 8 seconds. And thank you, Rob, for the support. I really appreciate it. Okay. Rutgers gets the ball back, and they start doing the things that happen when teams lose. They go 3 and out, and what do? They shank a punt and put Wisconsin right back at midfield. Right back at midfield. Rutgers eventually winds up going up 14-0. So at the beginning of a game, and I will say this to the Rutgers players, the worst thing that you can give to a visiting opponent is confidence. You did everything wrong in those first 8 minutes. You not only gave them confidence, but you put yourself down 2 touchdowns, and you look lifeless in doing so. Okay? And then we go into the second quarter after a first quarter in which Wisconsin totally dominated time of possession. In the trenches, the offensive line completely dominated what is a talented defensive line. Wisconsin used an up-tempo approach, and that up-tempo approach kept Rutgers off balance, made it difficult to substitute and line up properly. But Rutgers, were you not prepared for this? Did you not expect this to be a physical game because you were out-physicaled the whole game? All right, and look, I don't want to sound like I'm being too harsh on a team that I really support, but the facts are the facts, all right? And if the players feel bad, they should. This was not Rutgers football, and if they don't improve, they will remain at the bottom of the Big Ten, and that's going to be in perpetuity if they do not change their mindset. Now, we go through middle of the second quarter. Kyle Monangai, 5'10", about 180 pounds, fantastic running back. 6 rushes for 7 yards. Ethan Kaliakmanis, 3 of 7 for 12 yards. Wisconsin had the intensity and focus and was dominating on both sides of the ball. Rutgers, 1 first down in the first quarter. 1. Brandon Locke, the backup QB at Rutgers. I'm sorry, the backup QB at Wisconsin is torching our Rutgers secondary. Completely unacceptable. I see Rob says, lose the QB, put in Orgy. Well, that discussion about Alex Orgy will come for another day, but I will say that Rob implicitly has a point because Rutgers starting quarterback, he's okay. Is he great? No. And it showed today. Sits in the pocket too long. Indecisive. Throws bad interceptions. Sometimes throws a great deep ball, but sometimes is not enough. Not consistent, and there's no balance on Rutgers offense. You can't rely on Kyle Monangai to carry the whole offense. Okay. Rutgers' next drive, we get a pass interference call on Flip Dixon. Again, continuing to look lifeless. Wisconsin being more physical, more focused, more disciplined. Now, the Rutgers defensive line was getting some pressure on Locke, but their scheme was very effective because of the quick passes that kept Rutgers on its heels and off balance. Okay? Now, there was some bright light finally in this game at 7:22 left in the second quarter, all right, when Wisconsin misses a field goal. But we didn't capitalize. And you want to know why we didn't capitalize? Because the receivers were dropping passes all over the place. It looked like they looked like a deer in headlights, like they weren't ready for the big stage. Consistent drops on critical downs. So I don't want to put this all on Ethan Kaliakmanis. I'm certainly not putting on Kyle Monangai or Coach Shiano. I'm saying this was a total team failure. 42-7 at home in Piscataway against a 3-2 Wisconsin team. Disgraceful. All right, there was another critical moment, okay, in the second quarter. Rutgers, 4th and 1, driving the ball. Now, here's what happens on a 4th and 1. And I'll say this to Coach Shiano. You get your team together, all right? And you say, if you cannot get 3 feet, you don't deserve to win this blank game. And you play that down like your life depends on it. What did Rutgers' offensive line do? They got completely blown up at the line of scrimmage. Completely blown up, and Monangai was stopped. So whatever momentum Rutgers may have had, they certainly no longer had. And it is simply inexcusable. When you have a 4th and 1 on your home turf, you're down 14-0. You got to get 3 feet. Or you know what? You don't deserve to win. You deserve to lose 42-7. This is embarrassing. All right. In the first half, Wisconsin is converting 50% of third downs. You're converting 1 of 7. And then Rutgers, when they finally had a chance to score some points, what do? They miss a 37-yard field goal. So we're dropping passes. We're missing field goals. We can't run the ball. We're getting gashed on the defensive line and in the secondary. That is a recipe for absolute disaster. And that is why Rutgers suffered what is probably the most embarrassing loss in the last couple of years. I see Rob 33 says, like Tuttle and Warren. Yeah, so Michigan football, an outstanding team that deservedly won the national championship last year, has a quarterback problem. And I would say Rutgers does too. We have Jack Tuttle, who is in year 7 in college football. who came in and gave some life to Rutgers. Gave some life to Michigan last week against Washington, but then threw 2 terrible interceptions. We have Alex Orji, who never turns the ball over, but can't throw the ball. And then we have Davis Warren, who, like Tuttle, throws some good passes, and then is a turnover machine, who threw 6 interceptions in 3 games, including 3 against Arkansas State. Not going to win like that. So that's a recap of the Rutgers game today. I don't anticipate that this will be an extremely long show because there's really not that much to say. All right. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and it went wrong because they did everything possibly wrong that they could do. They did. Turnovers, 4th down conversions, 3rd down conversions, terrible. Missed field goals. Okay, losing in the trenches. And I have to believe that Rutgers, a team that beat Washington 21-18, team that beat Washington 21-18 and won 26-23 on the road against Virginia Tech, should have had a better showing. Do they have the talent? Yes. Do they have the mindset? No. And I'm not sure if it's just Rutgers. I saw an Alabama team today barely escape South Carolina and looked almost equally as lifeless. I'm not sure if it's NIL. I don't know what it is, but I see a lot of players doing lots of interviews, making a lot of money, but they don't seem to have a lot of heart. They don't seem to be old school. Okay? And not only is that going to hurt college football, but that's going to hurt their careers and hurt them in life. And Rob says, yes, but Orji wins. He's correct about that. Alex Orji was the quarterback when Michigan defeated USC. Alex Orji does not turn the ball over. And maybe he will be the future of Michigan football. I can't say that for sure. But what I've seen so far is that while he's a good game manager, he is not a good passer. But when you look at the alternatives, Jack Tuttle, the only player I think I've ever known who spent 7 years in college football, and Davis Warren, who just likes to throw the ball to the other team. What choice does Michigan have? But Michigan will be back. Michigan still has a great defense, and they will still contend. Whether Sharon Moore stays as the head coach is another thing, but that I can't say, but I would suspect the answer to that is probably no. So it's still early in the day. We've got some great games coming up or having already started. USC, Penn State. I admit my alma mater is USC, hoping for the upset over the Nittany Lions. But what's going to happen today? I think Penn State pulls out the victory. I think USC's offensive line is not going to hold up against the Penn State defensive front. Ole Miss at LSU. All right. So I think this game goes to Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is about to go on a run. They looked fantastic last week. And Jackson Dart was on. I think the Kentucky game was an anomaly. And also, a lot of people, don't realize that sometimes a loss is the absolute best thing that can ever happen to you. And I think that may be the case with Ole Miss. Finally, Ole Miss has a defense. I see Rob predicting LSU. I'll tell you, Rob, this is a tough one to predict. I don't know. I think Ole Miss probably, given their offense and given their wideouts against an LSU secondary that's still kind of suspect, I think Ole Miss has the edge. But you never know. You never know. The games have become so unpredictable, but I would give the slight edge to Ole Miss. And then, of course, 7:30 tonight, Ohio State and Oregon. And as an alum of USC, I can tell you Autzen Stadium is a tough place to play because at Autzen Stadium, it is loud. Why is it loud? Because the way that the stadium is constructed, the fans are closer to the field. And it is the most annoying stadium because for 4 quarters, you just hear college students screaming at the top of the lungs in your ears. It's a very tough place to play. But I think Ohio State has the talent. And I think Ohio State, most importantly, has the defense that is going to shut down the Ducks or at least contain them. Couple that with the fact that Will Howard is playing good enough on the Buckeyes offense. I think in a close one, Ohio State pulls it out 30-27. But again, it could go the other way. Now, Rob said it's at LSU at night. Ole Miss and LSU tonight. All right. Rob's got a point. I've been to Death Valley a few times, and I will tell you, LSU at night is a scary place to play. It is incredibly loud. And when LSU plays at night, they bring their A game. So that could be a problem. But if Ole Miss wants to break through finally, this is Ole Miss's chance to finally break through and contend, all right, for the SEC title. Ole Miss has always been just a notch below the Georgia, the Alabama. All right. Now is their chance to break through. And if they don't do it tonight, I'm not sure if they're ever going to do it. All right. Lane Kiffin has to come up with a game plan that is going to expose that secondary. And the Ole Miss defense has to get pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. If they don't get pressure, you're going to have a shootout. And in Death Valley at night, Ole Miss may become Tiger bait and lose the game. So I would still say I could see Ole Miss with 32-27 over LSU. But again, it could go the other way. If you're ever in Baton Rouge, I would recommend going to an LSU game. Your ears will hurt, but you will experience one of the best stadiums in college football. Now, again, I want to go back to Ohio State and Oregon. This game is big for a lot of reasons. Right now in the Big Ten, you pretty much have Ohio State and everybody else. The thing about Ohio State, though, is that if you look at their games, when they played Marshall scored 14 points in the first half against them. When they played Michigan State was moving the ball on Ohio State in East Lansing. However, Michigan State does what Michigan State does. They move the ball, and then they turn it over or do something stupid. Okay? But I think it's Ohio State it's Ohio State and Oregon and everyone else. And tonight's going to determine who is really at the top of the Big Ten. But I wouldn't count out Penn State. And dare I say, I'm not going to yet count out Michigan because Michigan still has an elite secondary and a very, very good defensive line, as we saw against USC when in Ann Arbor they put Miller Moss was under duress for 4 quarters. And given the unpredictability with which this college football season is unfolding, anything can happen. And don't be surprised if there's a shocker in Columbus come November. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss tonight. Penn State, I'm going to go with Ohio State over Oregon. Now, Penn State and USC. USC under Lincoln Riley has been an interesting trip. Penn State's got a defensive line, an elite defensive line. USC does not have a very good offensive line. That, in my view, will be the difference. Because, let me tell you, Miller Moss, in my opinion, is the next Drew Brees. 5 years from now, you're going to see Miller Moss in the NFL. He's calm in the pocket. He knows how to read defenses quickly. He goes through his progressions quickly, and he has pinpoint accuracy. But what we saw in Ann Arbor was that he was under duress for most of the game because the USC offensive line was terrible. I suspect that will be the case. Or shall I say, since the game has already begun, it is probably already the case that Penn State will have him under duress. What does that mean? That means Moss might throw a few picks. That means that USC's offense will not sustain long drives. And that means Penn State's going to win the time of possession and slowly grind out a victory. I'm going with Penn State 23-17. And that is the current state of college football today. Once again, Rutgers, you were terrible. There is no reason for a loss like this. And the players, you better get your head right, or else you're going to lose multiple games going forward and be back in the basement where Rutgers football has been for so many years. Get your head out of your ass. This was unacceptable. And if it doesn't change, well, Rutgers is going to keep being Rutgers when you, in fact, deserve better. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Tune in to Rutgers at the Voice of College Football every Monday at 7 p.m. And we will also be on Saturdays after each game to discuss what I hope will be a better story going forward. Have a great day. Enjoy college football, and thanks for being here.